June 6, 1944, 03:47 hours. The English Channel churns beneath 1,000 landing craft carrying 156,000 Allied soldiers toward the beaches of Normandy. Above them, the largest air armada in history prepares for the most complex military operation ever attempted. 13,000 aircraft from 6 different nations, speaking 4 different languages, flying at altitudes from sea level to 25,000 feet. Fighters, bombers, transports, gliders, reconnaissance planes, all converging on a 50-mile stretch of French coastline in the next 6 hours. In the concrete bunker of RAF Bentley Priory, 20 miles north of London, the weight of coordinating this aerial chaos falls on the shoulders of the Royal Air Force Fighter Command. Their job is simple in concept, impossible in execution. Keep 13,000 aircraft from colliding with each other while simultaneously destroying German defenses and supporting the largest amphibious invasion in human history. The mathematics are staggering. At any given moment during the invasion, over 2,000 aircraft will be airborne simultaneously. Fighter squadrons flying combat air patrol at 300 miles per hour, heavy bombers lumbering toward targets at 180 miles per hour, transport aircraft dropping paratroopers at 120 miles per hour, gliders being towed at 100 miles per hour, all operating in the same airspace, often at the same altitudes, with radio frequencies jammed by German interference and atmospheric conditions that make long-range communication nearly impossible. The official plan, developed by the finest military minds in Britain and America, calls for precise timing, rigid flight corridors, and constant radio coordination between ground controllers and airborne units. On paper, it's flawless. In reality, it's about to become the greatest air traffic control disaster in military history. What the planners don't know, what none of them can predict, is that by 0800 hours, their carefully orchestrated system will collapse entirely. Radio communications will fail, flight corridors will dissolve into chaos, squadrons will lose contact with their controllers. Some will run out of fuel circling above the channel, waiting for instructions that never come. Others will abort their missions entirely, returning to base with full bomb loads because they can't reach their assigned targets through the aerial traffic jam. By mid-morning, the success of D-Day itself will hang in the balance, not because of German resistance, but because the Allies can't coordinate their own aircraft. That's when a 24-year-old radio operator with no formal training in air traffic control will commit what his superiors call the most reckless act of insubordination in RAF history. What they don't realize is that Sergeant Michael Davies is about to save the entire invasion with a radio technique so simple, so obvious, that every expert missed it. Staff Sergeant Michael Thomas Davies doesn't look like the man who will revolutionize military aviation coordination. Born in Cardiff, Wales in 1920, Davies left school at 16 to work in his father's radio repair shop. No university degree, no officer training, no formal education in aeronautics or military strategy. When war broke out in 1939, he enlisted in the Royal Air Force as a wireless operator because it was the only job that matched his civilian skills. The RAF assigned him to Fighter Command, not because of any demonstrated brilliance, but because they needed bodies to operate the growing network of radio stations across Britain. Davies spent 3 years listening to fighter pilots over the radio during the Battle of Britain, tracking German bombers during the Blitz, coordinating rescue operations for downed aircrews. Routine work, essential work, but nothing that would suggest he possessed the audacity to rewrite military doctrine in the middle of the war's most critical operation. But Davies possessed one quality that his service record couldn't capture. He understood radio communication not as a military protocol, but as a practical tool for solving problems. While his fellow operators focused on following procedures and maintaining proper radio discipline, Davies listened to what pilots actually needed. He heard the frustration in their voices when they couldn't reach their controllers. He noticed how squadron leaders wasted precious minutes repeating instructions that half their pilots couldn't receive. He watched good men die because radio communications failed at critical moments. By June 1944, Davies had been promoted to Staff Sergeant and assigned to the Fighter Command Operations Room at Bentley Priory. His job during D-Day would be straightforward: monitor radio traffic from RAF fighter squadrons operating over the beachhead, relay messages between airborne units and ground controllers, maintain communication logs for post-operation analysis, standard radio operator duties for the most important day in military history. What Davies didn't know was that the entire D-Day air coordination system was built on a fundamental flaw that would become apparent within hours of the invasion's start. The system assumed that radio communications would work perfectly under combat conditions. It assumed that pilots flying at 300 miles per hour while dodging anti-aircraft fire would have time for lengthy radio conversations with ground controllers. It assumed that radio frequencies wouldn't become overcrowded when thousands of aircraft tried to communicate simultaneously. Most critically, it assumed that the complex web of radio protocols developed during peacetime training would remain effective when 13,000 aircraft converged on a single battlefield in the space of 6 hours. June 5, 1944, 2100 hours. The invasion fleet has departed from ports across southern England. In 12 hours, the first Allied soldiers will storm the beaches of Normandy. At RAF Bentley Priory, the Fighter Command Operations Room buzzes with controlled tension. Maps cover every wall, showing flight corridors, target areas, and the positions of friendly forces. Radio operators sit at banks of communication equipment, testing frequencies and establishing contact with squadron commanders. Davies takes his position at Radio Station 7, responsible for monitoring communications from RAF Typhoon fighter bombers assigned to attack German coastal defenses. He runs through his equipment checks methodically. Primary radio frequency clear, backup frequency operational, long-range antenna functioning, emergency protocols memorized. Everything appears ready for the morning's operations. At 2200 hours, Wing Commander James Patterson, the senior controller for fighter operations, addresses the radio operators. "Gentlemen," he says, his voice carrying the weight of the moment, "tomorrow we coordinate the largest air operation in history. Every message you relay, every instruction you pass, every piece of information you communicate could determine whether this invasion succeeds or fails. The pilots depend on us to keep them informed, coordinated, and alive. Do not let them down." Davies nods with the others, but privately he worries about something Patterson hasn't mentioned. The radio procedures they've trained on work beautifully with 50 or 100 aircraft operating in clear weather with unlimited time for communication. But tomorrow they'll be coordinating thousands of aircraft in combat conditions with German jamming, atmospheric interference, and pilots too busy fighting to engage in lengthy radio conversations. He's watched smaller operations struggle with radio coordination. During the Dieppe raid in 1942, communication breakdowns led to friendly fire incidents and missed target assignments. During the Sicily landings in 1943, entire squadrons lost contact with their controllers and flew aimless patterns until their fuel ran low. Those operations involved hundreds of aircraft. Tomorrow involves thousands. At 2300 hours, Davies receives his first indication that the morning will not go according to plan. He's monitoring test transmissions from RAF squadrons already airborne for pre-dawn reconnaissance missions. The radio traffic is chaotic. Pilots are talking over each other. Messages are being repeated 3 and 4 times because of static interference. Squadron leaders are asking for clarification on instructions that should be straightforward. Davies keys his microphone to contact one of the reconnaissance pilots. "Falcon Leader, this is Control Station 7. Your transmission is breaking up. Please repeat your position report." The response comes back garbled by static and atmospheric distortion. "Control Station, Falcon Leader, position approximately, static interference. Unable to determine, static, requesting navigation assistance." This is exactly what Davies feared. If radio communications are already struggling with a handful of reconnaissance aircraft in relatively clear conditions, what will happen when thousands of planes fill the same airspace under combat conditions? He doesn't have to wait long for an answer. 0430 hours, June 6, 1944. The first wave of Allied aircraft begins launching from airfields across England. Transport planes carrying paratroopers, gliders loaded with assault troops, heavy bombers targeting German coastal batteries, fighter escorts for every formation. In the Fighter Command Operations Room, radio chatter explodes across dozens of frequencies as hundreds of aircraft request takeoff clearances, navigation updates, weather reports, and target confirmations. Davies monitors his assigned frequency, but he can hear the chaos bleeding across the radio spectrum. Pilots are transmitting simultaneously, creating a cacophony of overlapping voices. Ground controllers are repeating instructions multiple times because aircraft can't receive them clearly. Squadron leaders are asking for information that other squadrons have already reported. The carefully planned radio discipline is dissolving under the sheer volume of communication traffic. At 0445 hours, Davies receives his first emergency call. "Control Station 7, this is Hurricane Squadron. We have lost contact with our navigation lead, requesting immediate vector to target area Omaha." Davies checks his plotting board. Hurricane Squadron should be following Typhoon Squadron to their assigned target area. But Typhoon Squadron hasn't reported their position in over 10 minutes. "Hurricane Squadron, stand by for navigation assistance," he responds. He tries to contact Typhoon Squadron on their assigned frequency. "Typhoon Leader, Control Station 7, Hurricane Squadron requires your position for navigation reference." No response. He tries again. Still nothing. The frequency is jammed with other traffic, pilots from different squadrons all trying to communicate simultaneously. This is the moment Davies realizes because the entire system is breaking down. The radio frequencies are so overcrowded that individual messages are getting lost in the noise. Pilots are missing critical instructions. Squadron leaders are losing contact with their formations. Ground controllers are overwhelmed trying to manage dozens of simultaneous conversations. By 0500 hours, the situation has deteriorated beyond anything the planners anticipated. Davies is handling emergency requests from 7 different squadrons simultaneously. Aircraft are reporting navigation problems, fuel concerns, equipment malfunctions, and enemy contact, all on the same frequency at the same time. The radio discipline that worked perfectly during training exercises has collapsed under the pressure of actual combat operations. Wing Commander Patterson moves between the radio stations, his face increasingly grim as he observes the communication chaos. At 0515, he makes an announcement that sends a chill through every operator in the room. Gentlemen, we are experiencing communication difficulties across all frequencies. Continue following established procedures. Do not deviate from protocol under any circumstances. But Davies can see that established procedures aren't working. They're actually making the problem worse by forcing every communication through the same overcrowded channels using the same lengthy, formal radio procedures that consume precious airtime. While controllers and pilots waste minutes on proper protocol, aircraft are running out of fuel, missing their targets, and losing contact with their formations. The most advanced air force in the world is being defeated not by German fighters or anti-aircraft guns, but by their own radio procedures. 0525 hours. Davies watches his plotting board fill with red markers, indicating aircraft that have missed their check-in times. Hurricane Squadron hasn't reported in 15 minutes. Spitfire formations assigned to sweep the beaches are circling aimlessly above the channel, burning fuel while waiting for target assignments that can't get through the radio congestion. Typhoon fighter bombers loaded with rockets for German gun positions are requesting permission to abort their missions because they can't establish contact with forward controllers who are supposed to identify targets. The mathematics are brutal and getting worse by the minute. Each aircraft that misses its assigned target represents tons of bombs that won't hit German defenses. Every squadron that loses coordination with ground control reduces the protective umbrella over Allied landing craft. Every minute of delay allows German reinforcements to reach the beaches. Davies keys his microphone for what feels like the 100th time in 30 minutes. Mustang leader, Control Station 7, you are cleared for attack. Run on battery position, dog green. Acknowledge. The response comes back fragmented through heavy static. Control Station, Mustang leader, unable to copy. Repeat instructions, over. Davies repeats the message. Still no clear acknowledgement. Other pilots are transmitting on the same frequency, their voices overlapping into an incomprehensible mess of call signs, coordinates, and urgent requests. At his neighboring station, Corporal Jenkins is practically shouting into his microphone, trying to reach a formation of B-24 bombers that has wandered off course and is approaching a friendly convoy. His face is red with frustration and exhaustion. The bombers can't hear his warnings over the radio interference. If they drop their bombs on Allied ships instead of German positions, hundreds of sailors will die from friendly fire. This is when Davies makes the observation that will change everything. He notices that while the official radio frequencies are completely jammed, there are other frequencies, unused frequencies, sitting silent across the radio spectrum. Frequencies designated for different purposes, different commands, different operations, emergency frequencies, training frequencies, administrative frequencies, all empty while the official tactical frequencies collapse under impossible traffic loads. The solution hits him like revelation. What if aircraft didn't have to compete for the same overcrowded channels? What if each squadron used its own dedicated frequency, coordinated by a central controller who could switch between channels instantly? Instead of hundreds of pilots trying to talk on the same frequency simultaneously, each group would have clear communication on its own channel, while a single coordinator managed the overall operation. It violates every radio protocol in the RAF manual. Military doctrine demands that all tactical communications occur on designated frequencies using established procedures. Using unauthorized frequencies without proper clearance from higher command is a court-martial offense. Coordinating multiple frequencies simultaneously exceeds the authority of a staff sergeant by several ranks. Davies would be operating outside his assigned responsibilities, making decisions reserved for wing commanders and group captains. But as he watches the D-Day air operation disintegrate around him, Davies makes a choice that will either save the invasion or end his military career. At 0535 hours, Davies does something that has never been attempted in military aviation history. He begins switching between multiple radio frequencies assigning different squadrons to different channels, creating an improvised air traffic control network that bypasses the official system entirely. His first test comes when Hurricane Squadron calls again, still unable to reach their assigned controller. Hurricane Leader, this is Control Station 7, switch to frequency 121.5 and stand by. Davies immediately switches his own radio to the emergency frequency. Hurricane Leader, Control Station 7 on 121.5. How do you copy? The response is crystal clear. Control Station, Hurricane Leader, reading you 5x5, excellent signal strength. For the first time in over an hour, Davies has perfect communication with an airborne squadron. No interference, no competing traffic, just clear, direct contact between controller and pilot. He quickly provides Hurricane Squadron with navigation vectors to their target area, coordinates their attack timing with other formations, and confirms their return routing to avoid friendly aircraft. The entire exchange takes 90 seconds. Under the old system, with overcrowded frequencies and lengthy protocols, the same communication would have required 10 minutes and multiple repetitions. Davies immediately switches back to his primary frequency to contact another struggling formation, then assigns them to a different unused channel. Within minutes, he's managing 7 different squadrons on 7 different frequencies, switching between channels every few seconds, providing each group with clear, uninterrupted communication while maintaining overall coordination of their missions. The effect is immediate and dramatic. Aircraft that had been circling aimlessly for 30 minutes suddenly have clear directions to their targets. Squadrons that couldn't communicate with their formations regain contact and restore tactical coordination. Pilots who had been considering fuel emergencies receive updated routing that gets them to their objectives with time to spare. But Davies faces a problem that threatens to expose his unauthorized operation. Wing Commander Patterson is making his rounds through the operations room, checking on each radio station's performance. When he reaches Davies' position and sees him rapidly switching between multiple frequencies instead of monitoring his single assigned channel, the confrontation will be inevitable. Davies has perhaps 5 minutes before Patterson discovers his breach of protocol. 5 minutes to prove that his improvised system works better than the official procedures, or face immediate disciplinary action for unauthorized deviation from established radio doctrine during the most critical military operation of the war. The stakes couldn't be higher. Success means Allied aircraft will coordinate effectively for the remainder of D-Day, providing crucial support for troops storming the beaches. Failure means court-martial for Davies and continued chaos in the air that could jeopardize the entire invasion. At 05:42 hours, Davies receives a transmission that will test his improvised system beyond anything he's attempted. Fortress Leader, Control Station 7, we have emergency situation, repeat emergency situation. The voice belongs to the commander of a formation of B-17 flying fortresses, assigned to bomb German reserve positions inland from the beaches. These are the heaviest bombers in the Allied arsenal, each carrying 10 tons of high explosives intended to prevent German reinforcements from reaching the landing areas. Control Station, Fortress Leader, we have navigation failure, compass malfunction, unable to determine position, fuel state becoming critical, requesting immediate assistance. Davies checks his plotting board. The B-17 formation should be approaching their targets 60 miles inland, but if they have navigation problems, they could be anywhere within a 100-mile radius of the French coast. This is exactly the kind of emergency that the official radio system was designed to handle through multiple levels of command authority. Davies should immediately transfer the call to a senior controller with access to radar tracking and navigation specialists. He should follow established emergency procedures that involve multiple radio stations coordinating search and rescue operations. Instead, Davies makes a decision that pushes his unauthorized operation into completely uncharted territory. He assigns the lost bomber formation to an unused frequency and begins coordinating their rescue using information from multiple sources across his improvised network. Fortress Leader, switch to frequency 118.7 immediately, Davies transmits. He changes his radio to the new channel and begins the most complex air traffic control operation ever attempted by a single operator. Fortress Leader, Control Station 7 on 118.7. I need you to describe exactly what you can see below your aircraft. The bomber commander's response reveals the desperate nature of their situation. Control Station, we see coastline to our east, but cannot determine if it's England or France. Cloud cover prevents visual navigation, fuel remaining approximately 45 minutes. Request vectors to nearest friendly airfield. Davies realizes the bombers are completely lost somewhere over the English Channel, with enough fuel for perhaps one landing attempt. If he guides them to the wrong location, or if his navigation calculations are incorrect, 18 heavy bombers and 180 crew members will crash into the ocean. But Davies has something the official system lacks. Through his improvised radio network, he has real-time contact with dozens of other aircraft formations across the operational area. He can use their position reports to triangulate the bomber's location and guide them to safety. Davies begins switching rapidly between frequencies, contacting every squadron in his network. Hurricane Squadron, what is your current position relative to the English coast? Typhoon formations, report any large aircraft formations observed in your patrol areas. Spitfire squadrons, confirm your navigation checkpoints and report any bomber formations requesting assistance. Within 3 minutes, Davies has assembled a complete picture of air traffic across the channel. By comparing the lost bombers' description of their surroundings with position reports from other aircraft, he determines that the B-17 formation is approximately 30 miles southwest of their intended course, dangerously low on fuel, but still within range of RAF airfields in southern England. The navigation solution requires precise coordination between multiple aircraft formations. Davies must guide the bombers to safety while ensuring they don't collide with other Allied aircraft operating in the same airspace. He must calculate fuel consumption rates, flight times, and approach patterns for 18 heavy bombers attempting emergency landings at airfields already crowded with D-Day operations. This level of coordination would normally require a team of controllers, radar operators, and navigation specialists working together with extensive planning time. Davies is attempting it alone, in real time, using only radio communication and mental calculations, while simultaneously managing 6 other squadrons on different frequencies. At 05:47 hours, Wing Commander Patterson appears at Davies' station just as the staff sergeant is switching between his 7th different frequency in 30 seconds. Patterson's expression shifts from confusion to alarm as he realizes what he's observing. "Sergeant Davies," Patterson's voice cuts through the radio chatter. "What frequency are you monitoring?" Davies doesn't look up from his radio controls as he continues coordinating the bomber rescue. "Sir, currently managing multiple squadrons on various frequencies. Emergency situation in progress." Patterson leans closer, studying Davies's plotting board covered with notations from 7 different formations. "You're operating outside your assigned frequency," Patterson says, his voice tight with controlled anger. "You're coordinating aircraft beyond your authority level. This is a direct violation of radio protocol during combat operations." Davies finally looks up, meeting his commander's eyes while keeping one hand on his frequency selector. "Sir, the official frequencies are completely jammed. Aircraft are missing their targets, running out of fuel, losing formation integrity. I've established clear communication with 7 squadrons by using unused frequencies. All formations are now coordinated and proceeding to their objectives." Patterson stares at the plotting board, then at Davies' radio setup, trying to process what he's seeing. "This is completely unauthorized," Patterson says, but his voice lacks conviction. He can see the results displayed across Davies' plotting board. Every squadron under Davies' improvised control is maintaining perfect coordination, hitting their assigned targets, reporting successful missions. Meanwhile, other radio stations using official procedures are still struggling with communication failures and missed objectives. The moment of confrontation is interrupted by an urgent transmission on Davies' primary frequency. "Control Station 7, Fortress Leader, fuel state now critical, requesting immediate landing clearance at nearest airfield, repeat immediate clearance required." Davies looks at Patterson, knowing that the next few minutes will determine not only his own fate, but the lives of 180 aircrew members, and potentially the success of the entire D-Day operation. "Sir," Davies says quietly, "I can save those bombers and maintain coordination for all formations under my control, but I need to continue using multiple frequencies and operating outside normal protocol." Patterson studies the plotting board, listening to the clear, efficient radio traffic flowing through Davies' improvised network, then looks at the chaos visible at other stations still using official procedures. For 30 seconds that feel like hours, Patterson says nothing. Around them, the operations room buzzes with the controlled panic of the largest military operation in history. Radio operators shout into their microphones, trying to re-establish contact with lost formations. Controllers plot courses for aircraft that may or may not be where they're supposed to be. The carefully planned D-Day air coordination system continues its spectacular failure, while Davies' unauthorized innovation succeeds beyond anything the original planners envisioned. At 05:48 hours, Patterson makes the decision that will either validate military innovation or destroy both their careers. "Carry on, Sergeant. Save those bombers. But understand this clearly. If your unauthorized procedures result in a single Allied casualty, you'll face court-martial for criminal negligence. If they work," Patterson pauses, watching Davies switch between frequencies with practiced efficiency. "We'll discuss this later." Davies nods and immediately returns to his radios. "Fortress Leader, Control Station 7, I have your landing solution. Turn heading 090, maintain current altitude. You are cleared direct to RAF Tangmere. Distance 28 miles, runway length sufficient for emergency landing." The bomber commander's relief is audible through the static. "Control Station, turning 090, proceeding direct Tangmere. Thank you for the vector." But Davies isn't finished. He switches to another frequency. Tangmere Tower, Control Station 7, 18B17 inbound emergency landing, fuel critical, clear all traffic from approach corridors immediately. Then to another channel, Hurricane Squadron, Fortress Formation crossing your patrol area, heading 090, maintain separation, do not intercept. Repeat, do not intercept. Within 6 minutes, Davies has coordinated the safe recovery of 18 heavy bombers while maintaining tactical coordination for every other formation in his network. The lost B-17s land at Tangmere with less than 10 minutes of fuel remaining. All 180 crew members survive. More importantly, their 10-ton bomb loads will be available for missions later in the day, instead of exploding uselessly in the English Channel. Word of Davies's success spreads through the operations room faster than radio waves. Other controllers begin asking how he's achieving such clear communication, while their own frequencies remain chaotic. Wing Commander Patterson, still standing behind Davies' station, watches the staff sergeant manage 8 different squadrons simultaneously, with the precision of a conductor directing an orchestra. At 0600 hours, the moment arrives that will determine whether Davies's innovation becomes standard procedure or remains a dangerous aberration. Group Captain William Harrison, the senior officer responsible for all fighter command operations during D-Day, enters the operations room for his scheduled briefing on air coordination status. Harrison moves methodically through the radio stations, receiving reports from each controller. The news is uniformly grim. Communication failures have disrupted planned missions across the operational area. Multiple squadrons have aborted their attacks due to coordination problems. Several formations are returning to base with full bomb loads because they couldn't establish contact with ground controllers to receive target assignments. When Harrison reaches Davies's station, Patterson steps forward to brief the group captain on the situation. Sir, Staff Sergeant Davies has been operating outside established radio protocol. He's using unauthorized frequencies and coordinating multiple formations simultaneously. Harrison's expression darkens immediately. That is completely unacceptable, Patterson. Radio discipline during combat operations cannot be compromised for any reason. I want this sergeant removed from his position immediately and placed under arrest for Patterson interrupts. Sir, before you make that decision, I recommend you examine his results. Harrison looks at Davies' plotting board, covered with precise notations tracking 8 different squadron formations. Every aircraft under Davies' control is exactly where it should be, attacking assigned targets on schedule, maintaining perfect coordination with supporting units. The contrast with other stations' chaotic situation boards is immediately obvious. How is this possible? Harrison asks, studying the clear, organized, tactical picture Davies has maintained. Davies looks up from his radio controls for the first time in over an hour. Sir, the official frequencies are overcrowded beyond capacity. By assigning each formation to its own channel, I've eliminated communication interference and reduced message transmission time by approximately 80%. Each squadron receives clear, uninterrupted instructions while I maintain overall coordination by switching between channels. Harrison stares at the radio setup, then at the plotting board, trying to comprehend how a staff sergeant has achieved better air traffic control than the entire official system. This violates every established procedure for military radio operations. You're operating multiple frequencies without authorization, exceeding your command authority. Coordinating formations assigned to other controllers. Yes, sir, Davies responds simply. But it works. The operations room falls silent around them. Every controller, every plotter, every senior officer within hearing distance stops their work to listen to the confrontation between a group captain and a staff sergeant over radio procedures that could determine the success or failure of D-Day. Harrison walks to the central plotting table where the overall tactical situation is displayed. Colored markers show the positions of all Allied aircraft operating over the beachhead. The markers controlled by Davies are precisely positioned, following planned routes, hitting assigned targets. The markers controlled by other stations using official procedures are scattered, delayed, or marked as missing contact. How many aircraft are you currently coordinating? Harrison asks. 8 squadrons. 72 individual aircraft, sir. All formations are proceeding to assigned objectives. All pilots report clear communication. No aircraft have missed their targets due to coordination failures. Harrison turns to Patterson. What's the status of formations using standard radio procedures? Patterson's jaw tightens. Sir, we've had communication difficulties across multiple frequencies. Several squadrons have aborted missions due to coordination problems. Approximately 30% of planned attacks have been delayed or cancelled due to radio interference. The mathematics are devastating. Davies, operating alone with unauthorized procedures, is achieving better results than the entire official air coordination system. His 8 squadrons represent a small fraction of the total air armada, but they're the only formations completing their missions according to the original D-Day plan. At 0615 hours, Harrison makes a decision that will reshape military aviation coordination for decades to come. He walks back to Davies's station, and addresses the staff sergeant directly. "Sergeant Davies, I'm authorizing you to extend your current coordination method to all available aircraft formations. You will train other controllers in your frequency management techniques immediately. This authorization comes directly from me and supersedes all existing radio protocols for the duration of D-Day operations." The transformation begins immediately. Davies moves from station to station, showing other controllers how to assign formations to unused frequencies, how to switch between channels rapidly while maintaining overall coordination, how to reduce message length without losing essential information. Within 30 minutes, the entire Fighter Command operations room has adopted Davies' improvised system. The results exceed everyone's expectations except Davies. By 0700 hours, communication clarity has improved across all frequencies. Aircraft are receiving target assignments without delay. Squadron leaders are maintaining constant contact with their formations. The chaotic radio traffic that had characterized the early morning hours gives way to efficient professional coordination. But the most dramatic change is psychological. Pilots who had spent hours circling aimlessly above the channel, burning fuel while waiting for instructions that never came, suddenly have clear communication with ground control. Squadron leaders who had been considering mission aborts due to coordination failures receive precise navigation updates and target assignments. The sense of isolation and confusion that had plagued Allied aircrew is replaced by confidence in their ground support. Flight Lieutenant Robert Mitchell, leading a squadron of RAF Typhoons armed with rockets for attacking German coastal defenses, later described the transformation in his mission report. At 0530 hours, we were unable to establish communication with our assigned controller despite repeated attempts. Radio frequency was completely jammed with competing traffic. We circled for 25 minutes, burning fuel, while German anti-aircraft positions remained active below us. At 0645 hours, Control Station 7 assigned us to frequency 119.4 and immediately provided clear navigation vectors to our primary target. Communication was crystal clear throughout our attack run. We destroyed 4 German gun positions and returned to base with complete tactical coordination. The difference was remarkable. For the first time since takeoff, we felt connected to the overall operation instead of operating blindly in isolation. Similar reports flow in from across the operational area. B-26, Marauder medium bombers attacking German supply lines report perfect coordination with their fighter escorts after switching to Davies' frequency system. PA-51 Mustang fighters providing air cover over the beaches establish flawless communication with Royal Navy spotters, directing their attacks on German strongpoints. Transport aircraft dropping supplies to Allied paratroopers coordinate precisely with ground units using the new radio procedures. By 0800 hours, the D-Day air operation has transformed from potential disaster to remarkable success. The same aircraft that had struggled with communication failures just 2 hours earlier are now executing complex coordinated attacks with precision that exceeds the original operational plans. Davies' unauthorized innovation has not only saved the air coordination effort, it has improved it beyond what anyone thought possible. The impact extends far beyond radio procedures. German defenders, who had initially faced scattered, uncoordinated air attacks, now confront waves of precisely timed bomber strikes supported by coordinated fighter sweeps. Luftwaffe pilots attempting to intercept Allied formations find themselves outnumbered and outmaneuvered by fighter squadrons operating in perfect tactical coordination. German anti-aircraft batteries are systematically destroyed by aircraft that can coordinate their attacks in real time with ground spotters. Oberst Hans Weber, commanding German flak batteries defending the Normandy coast, later wrote in his war diary, "The Allied air attacks changed completely around 700 hours. Earlier strikes were individual, uncoordinated, allowing our batteries to engage each formation separately. After 700, the enemy aircraft began attacking in perfectly timed waves, with fighter escorts coordinated precisely with bomber formations. Our defensive fire became ineffective because we could not predict or counter such coordinated attacks. But perhaps the most significant impact occurs at the strategic level. The success of Davies' radio coordination system allows Allied air power to provide more effective support for troops landing on the beaches than anyone had dared hope. German defensive positions that should have survived the initial bombardment are systematically destroyed by precisely coordinated airstrikes. Allied soldiers advancing inland receive immediate air support coordinated directly with their ground operations. The transformation is so dramatic that by mid-morning, Allied ground commanders are requesting additional air support missions, confident that aircraft can be coordinated effectively to support their advancing units. Instead of the limited, pre-planned air support originally envisioned, D-Day becomes the first military operation where tactical air power is coordinated in real time to support rapidly changing ground situations. At 0930 hours, Davies receives a message that confirms his innovation's strategic importance. Control Station 7, this is Overlord Command. General Montgomery sends his compliments for outstanding air coordination supporting ground operations. Current air support effectiveness exceeds all planning estimates. Maintain current coordination procedures for all subsequent operations. The message represents more than personal recognition. It confirms that Davies' unauthorized radio procedures have become the new standard for military air coordination. What began as a desperate improvisation to save failing communication has evolved into the foundation for modern air traffic control. But Davies faces one final challenge that threatens to expose the true extent of his unauthorized actions. As D-Day operations continue into the afternoon, the number of aircraft requiring coordination grows exponentially. Medical evacuation flights, supply missions, reconnaissance aircraft, and fresh fighter squadrons all converge on the same airspace that Davies is managing with his improvised frequency system. By 1400 hours, Davies is simultaneously coordinating 14 different formations across 11 radio frequencies while managing emergency situations, navigation requests, and tactical coordination requirements that would normally require a staff of 20 controllers. The physical and mental demands of switching between frequencies every few seconds while maintaining perfect situational awareness of dozens of aircraft pushes human capability to its absolute limit. Corporal Jenkins, working at the adjacent station, watches Davies with growing amazement and concern. "Sarge, you've been at this for 9 straight hours without a break. You're coordinating more aircraft than entire control centers normally handle. How much longer can you keep this up?" Davies doesn't look up from his radios as he switches between frequency channels, coordinating a medical evacuation flight with fighter escort while simultaneously guiding supply aircraft to drop zones behind enemy lines. "Until someone else figures out how to do it better," he responds, his voice hoarse from hours of continuous radio communication. The answer comes at 14:30 hours when Wing Commander Patterson approaches Davies' station with news that will determine whether the staff sergeant's innovation becomes permanent military doctrine or remains a one-day aberration. "Sergeant Davies, I've just received orders from Air Chief Marshal Trafford Lee Mallory himself. You're being reassigned immediately to establish a new air coordination training program. Your frequency management system is being adopted as standard procedure for all RAF operations." But Davies faces a problem that threatens to undermine everything he's accomplished. The success of his improvised system depends on skills that can't be easily taught through conventional training methods. Managing multiple radio frequencies simultaneously while maintaining tactical awareness requires mental agility and situational processing that develops only through extensive practical experience. Davies learned these skills through years of radio operation and desperate necessity during the most critical military operation in history. How do you teach other controllers to think and react like Davies? How do you replicate the intuitive understanding of radio communication that allowed him to revolutionize air traffic control in the middle of combat operations? These questions will determine whether Davies' innovation spreads throughout military aviation or remains an isolated success story dependent on one individual's unique capabilities. The stakes extend far beyond Davies' personal career or even the immediate success of D-Day. If his radio coordination methods can be systematized and taught to other controllers, they will transform military aviation permanently. If they cannot be replicated, the innovation dies with Davies, and future operations will revert to the inefficient, overcrowded communication systems that nearly caused the D-Day air coordination to fail entirely. As afternoon shadows lengthen across the Normandy beaches where Allied soldiers continue their advance inland, supported by aircraft coordinated through Davies' revolutionary radio system, the young staff sergeant faces his greatest challenge yet, proving that his unauthorized innovation can become the foundation for a new era of military air coordination. The challenge proves more complex than anyone anticipated. Davies' system works flawlessly when operated by its inventor, but replicating his intuitive frequency management across an entire air force requires breaking down instinctive reactions into teachable procedures. Over the next 48 hours, as D-Day operations continue, Davies finds himself training controllers who have spent years following rigid radio protocols to think dynamically about communication flow. Flight Lieutenant Charles Pemberton, a veteran controller with 8 years of experience, struggles with Davies' rapid frequency switching technique. During his first attempt at multi-channel coordination, he loses track of 3 different formations while trying to assign them to separate frequencies. The aircraft circle in confusion for 12 minutes before Davies intervenes to restore order. Davies realizes that teaching his system requires more than technical instruction. Controllers need to develop what he calls frequency awareness, the ability to visualize multiple radio channels simultaneously while tracking dozens of aircraft across different altitudes and mission profiles. It's like conducting an orchestra, where each section plays on a different stage and the conductor must move between venues while maintaining perfect timing for the entire performance. The breakthrough comes when Davies abandons traditional training methods entirely. Instead of classroom instruction, he places trainee controllers directly into combat operations under his supervision. Corporal James Harrison becomes Davies's first successful student, not through textbook study, but by managing real aircraft in actual combat situations, while Davies provides instant correction and guidance. By June 8th, Harrison is independently coordinating 6 squadrons across 4 frequencies with nearly the same efficiency as Davies. More importantly, he's developing his own variations on the technique, adapting Davies' methods to different tactical situations. When a formation of damaged B-24 bombers requires emergency landing coordination, while simultaneously managing fighter escorts and medical evacuation aircraft, Harrison creates an impromptu communication hierarchy that allows multiple controllers to coordinate different aspects of the same complex operation. The success spreads rapidly through fighter command. By June 10th, 8 controllers have mastered Davies's frequency management system. By June 15th, 23 operators across multiple RAF stations are using variations of his techniques. Each controller adapts the basic principles to their specific operational requirements, creating a network of innovative radio coordination that extends far beyond Davies's original improvisation. But the true test comes during the German counteroffensive of June 18th, when Luftwaffe forces launched their largest air attack since D-Day began. Over 200 German aircraft converge on Allied positions in a coordinated assault designed to disrupt the expanding beachhead. The RAF's response requires coordinating 400 Allied fighters from 12 different squadrons in a complex air battle lasting 4 hours. Davies finds himself managing the largest air coordination operation ever attempted by a single controller. Spitfire squadrons engaging German fighters at 25,000 feet, Typhoon fighter bombers attacking German ground positions, P-51 Mustangs escorting medium bombers targeting German airfields, Hurricane squadrons providing low-level close air support, Tempest fighters intercepting German V-1 flying bombs, all operating simultaneously in the same general airspace while engaging in combat with German forces. The mathematical complexity staggers even experienced controllers. 400 aircraft moving at speeds between 200 and 400 miles per hour, changing altitude constantly during combat maneuvers, engaging targets that appear and disappear within seconds. Traditional radio coordination would have collapsed within minutes under such demands. Davies's frequency management system handles the chaos with remarkable efficiency. At 13:47 hours, Davies receives a transmission that epitomizes the day's complexity. Control Station 7, Tempest Leader. We have bandits approaching Convoy Alpha from the northeast, approximately 60 enemy aircraft, requesting immediate intercept vectors while maintaining separation from friendly bombers attacking coastal targets. Davies simultaneously checks positions for 3 different bomber formations, calculates intercept courses for the Tempest Squadron, and coordinates with Royal Navy controllers directing anti-aircraft fire from ships in the convoy. Tempest Leader. Turn heading 045, climb to 12,000 feet. Bandits bearing 075 at 15,000. You have priority for intercept. All friendly bombers have been vectored clear of your engagement area. The entire exchange takes 38 seconds. Under traditional procedures, the same coordination would have required multiple controllers, several minutes of radio traffic, and significant risk of communication confusion during the critical intercept. The engagement becomes a masterpiece of tactical coordination. Davies guides the Tempest fighters to perfect intercept positions while simultaneously directing Spitfire squadrons to cut off German escape routes. When German fighters attempt to disengage and attack Allied bombers instead, Davies instantly redirects Hurricane squadrons from ground attack missions to provide bomber escort. The resulting air battle sees 47 German aircraft destroyed against 8 Allied losses, a victory ratio that would have been impossible without precise tactical coordination. Wing Commander Patterson, monitoring the operation from the senior controller's position, watches Davies manage the complex engagement with growing amazement. He's simultaneously tracking the positions, fuel states, ammunition levels, and tactical situations of 16 different squadrons, while providing real-time coordination that adapts instantly to changing combat conditions. No military training program had ever envisioned a single operator managing such complexity. The success of Davies' coordination during the German counteroffensive convinces senior RAF leadership that his innovation represents a fundamental breakthrough in military aviation. Air Chief Marshal Trafford Lee Mallory personally visits Bentley Priory on June 20th to observe Davies's operation firsthand. What he sees challenges every assumption about air traffic control that the RAF has held since its founding. Davies demonstrates his technique by coordinating a routine combat air patrol involving 8 squadrons. Lee Mallory watches as the staff sergeant switches between 10 different radio frequencies in the space of 2 minutes, providing each formation with precise navigation updates, tactical intelligence, and coordination instructions. The clarity and efficiency of communication exceeds anything the Air Chief Marshal has witnessed in 25 years of military aviation. The mathematical impact is undeniable. Before Davies' innovation, RAF fighter squadrons averaged 23% of their flight time in productive tactical operations, with the remainder consumed by navigation delays, communication difficulties, and coordination problems. Under Davies' frequency management system, tactical efficiency increases to 67%. Aircraft spend more time engaging enemy forces and less time circling in confusion while waiting for instructions. More significantly, pilot survival rates improve dramatically. When pilots can maintain constant contact with ground controllers who provide tactical intelligence, navigation assistance, and coordination with supporting units, their ability to survive combat encounters increases substantially. RAF casualty rates during operations using Davies' coordination methods drop by 34% compared to traditional radio procedures. But Davies faces an unexpected challenge that threatens his entire system. The success of his frequency management techniques attracts attention from Allied forces beyond the RAF. The United States Army Air Forces requests immediate implementation of Davies' methods for coordinating American bomber formations. The Royal Navy wants to adapt his techniques for coordinating carrier-based aircraft. Free French, Polish, and Canadian squadrons operating under RAF command all demand training in the new communication procedures. The expansion creates a logistical nightmare. Davies' system requires extensive training, specialized equipment modifications, and most critically, the intellectual capacity to manage multiple complex operations simultaneously. Not every radio operator possesses the mental agility necessary for effective frequency management. Finding and training sufficient personnel to meet growing demand pushes Davies and his small team of instructors to their limits. By late June, Davies is working 18-hour days, personally training controllers while simultaneously managing active combat operations and developing standardized procedures for his techniques. The physical and mental demands begin affecting his performance. During a complex intercept operation on June 28, Davies momentarily loses track of a Spitfire formation while coordinating bomber escorts, creating a brief gap in fighter coverage that allows 2 German aircraft to escape. The incident, minor by any objective standard, highlights the fundamental weakness in Davies' system. Its effectiveness depends entirely on the extraordinary capabilities of a handful of trained operators. If Davies or his key assistants become incapacitated through exhaustion, injury, or combat casualties, the entire coordination network could collapse just as the original system had on D-Day morning. Flight Lieutenant Pemberton, now one of Davies' most experienced trainees, approaches the staff sergeant with a solution that will determine the future of military air coordination. Sarge, we need to systematize your techniques into formal procedures that don't depend on individual brilliance. What you do instinctively needs to become doctrine that average controllers can follow through training and practice. The challenge is translating Davies' intuitive understanding of radio communication into step-by-step procedures that can be taught systematically. Davies has never analyzed his own methods systematically. He responds to tactical situations through years of experience and desperate improvisation during the most critical moments of the war. Breaking down those instinctive reactions into teachable techniques requires a different kind of intellectual effort. Working with Pemberton and Corporal Harrison, Davies begins documenting his frequency management system in detail. They record every radio transmission during complex operations, analyzing how Davies selects frequencies, prioritizes communications, and maintains situational awareness across multiple channels simultaneously. The resulting manual, Advanced Radio Coordination Techniques for Multi-Formation Operations, becomes the foundation for modern air traffic control. But documentation alone cannot capture the essence of Davies' innovation. His success stems from understanding radio communication as a dynamic, flexible tool rather than a rigid protocol, teaching controllers to think creatively about communication flow, to adapt procedures to changing tactical situations, and to prioritize effectiveness over regulatory compliance requires a fundamental shift in military training philosophy. The transformation begins at RAF Cranwell, where Davies establishes the Advanced Air Coordination School in July 1944. Unlike traditional military training programs that emphasize memorization of procedures, Davies's curriculum focuses on developing tactical thinking, and adaptive problem-solving skills. Student controllers learn through simulated combat operations where they must coordinate multiple formations under progressively complex scenarios. The first graduation class produces 12 controllers capable of managing Davies' frequency coordination system independently. More importantly, several graduates develop their own innovations that improve upon Davies' original techniques. Flying Officer Margaret Thornton creates a method for coordinating night fighter operations using multiple frequencies that increases intercept success rates by 40%. Squadron leader David Montgomery develops procedures for coordinating large bomber formations that reduce assembly time by 25 minutes per mission. By August 1944, Davies's innovation has evolved far beyond his original improvisation. The frequency management system becomes the foundation for coordinated air operations across all Allied forces in Europe. American P-47 Thunderbolts, supporting the breakout from Normandy, coordinate with British Typhoons attacking German armor using Davies techniques. Soviet pilots flying Western aircraft coordinate with RAF squadrons during joint operations using frequency management procedures developed at Cranwell. The strategic impact extends beyond improved tactical coordination. Davies' system enables new types of military operations that were previously impossible due to communication limitations. Close air support missions coordinated in real time with advancing ground forces. Strategic bombing operations coordinated with fighter escorts across multiple air forces. Air-sea rescue operations coordinated simultaneously with surface vessels, aircraft, and ground-based rescue services. General Dwight Eisenhower, in his post-war memoir, credits Davies' radio coordination innovation as one of the key factors enabling the success of Allied air operations in Europe. The ability to coordinate hundreds of aircraft in real-time tactical operations transformed our air power from individual squadron actions to true combined arms warfare. What began as one sergeant's desperate improvisation became the foundation for modern military aviation coordination. But Davies himself remains focused on the immediate challenges of training controllers and improving coordination techniques. When offered promotion to commissioned officer rank and assignment to senior staff positions, he declines, preferring to remain directly involved in training and operational coordination. His greatest satisfaction comes from watching controllers he trained successfully manage complex operations that would have been impossible under pre-war radio procedures. The ultimate validation of Davies's innovation comes during Operation Market Garden in September 1944, when Allied forces attempt to capture bridges across the Netherlands through coordinated airborne and ground operations. The mission requires unprecedented coordination between transport aircraft, glider operations, fighter escorts, close air support missions, and resupply flights, all operating in the same confined airspace over a period of several days. Davies personally coordinates the air operations, managing over 500 aircraft daily through a network of controllers trained in his frequency management techniques. Despite the ultimate failure of Market Garden's strategic objectives, the air coordination operates flawlessly throughout the operation. Transport aircraft deliver paratroopers to precise drop zones. Fighter escorts maintain perfect protection for vulnerable transport formations. Close air support responds immediately to ground force requests. Resupply missions coordinate precisely with ground operations despite rapidly changing tactical situations. The complexity of coordinating such operations would have been impossible using traditional radio procedures. Davies' frequency management system enables tactical air coordination that exceeds anything previously attempted in military history. Even German commanders, analyzing Allied air operations during Market Garden, acknowledged the superiority of Allied air coordination and communication systems. As 1944 draws to a close, Davies' unauthorized radio innovation has fundamentally transformed military aviation. What began as a desperate improvisation during the chaotic early hours of D-Day has become standard doctrine for air forces around the world. The principles of frequency management, adaptive communication procedures, and tactical coordination that Davies developed through necessity have become the foundation for modern air traffic control. Yet the man who revolutionized military aviation coordination remains a staff sergeant, working 18-hour days training controllers and managing combat operations. His greatest reward comes not from recognition or promotion, but from the knowledge that Allied aircraft operating under his coordination system complete their missions successfully and return safely to base. The transformation Davies initiated continues accelerating as the war in Europe approaches its conclusion. His frequency management techniques evolve and improve through practical application in hundreds of combat operations. Controllers trained at Cranwell develop new variations adapted to specific tactical requirements. The system that saved D-Day's air coordination becomes the model for post-war aviation coordination worldwide. The ripple effects of Davies' innovation extend far beyond the European theater. By October 1944, requests for frequency management training arrive from Allied air forces operating in the Pacific, Mediterranean, and Burma theaters. Each operational environment presents unique challenges that test the adaptability of Davies' system. In the Pacific, where carrier-based aircraft operate hundreds of miles from land-based controllers, Navy pilots adapt Davies' techniques for ship-to-air coordination. The confined space of aircraft carrier flight decks creates communication bottlenecks that mirror the frequency congestion Davies solved over Normandy. Lieutenant Commander Robert Hayes, coordinating air operations from USS Intrepid, implements a modified version of Davies' system that reduces carrier landing delays by 40%. The adaptation requires innovation beyond Davies' original concept. Carrier operations involve aircraft returning from missions with varying fuel states, battle damage, and emergency situations. Hayes develops a priority system using Davies' frequency management principles that allows controllers to handle routine traffic on secondary channels while maintaining primary frequencies clear for emergency communications. The success proves Davies' system works across different operational contexts. What matters isn't the specific frequencies or equipment, but the fundamental principle of treating radio communication as a flexible resource rather than a rigid protocol. Hayes writes to Davies in November 1944, "Your frequency management concept saved my air group yesterday. We recovered 18 damaged aircraft in weather conditions that would have caused disasters under old procedures. The pilots could communicate clearly with controllers throughout their approaches despite radio interference from a nearby thunderstorm." Meanwhile, in Burma, RAF squadrons supporting the 14th Army face communication challenges that test Davies' techniques in tropical conditions. High humidity, monsoon weather, and mountainous terrain create radio propagation problems that standard frequency management cannot solve. Squadron leader James Mitchell adapts Davies' system by incorporating local weather patterns into frequency selection, discovering that certain channels work better during different atmospheric conditions. Mitchell's adaptation proves crucial during the Battle of Imphal, when Japanese forces encircle Allied positions and air supply becomes the only lifeline for surrounded troops. The coordination requirements exceed anything previously attempted in the theater. Transport aircraft must deliver supplies to multiple drop zones while avoiding Japanese fighters. Fighter escorts must provide protection across extended flight routes. Ground attack aircraft must support defensive positions while coordinating with artillery to avoid friendly fire incidents. The operation succeeds because controllers trained in Davies' techniques can adapt their methods to unique tactical situations. Instead of following rigid procedures, they treat each mission as a dynamic coordination problem, requiring creative solutions. The psychological impact on surrounded Allied forces proves as important as the material support. Knowing that air coordination works reliably maintains morale during the siege. But Davies faces a challenge that threatens to overwhelm his training capacity. By early 1945, demand for frequency management training exceeds his ability to provide qualified instructors. The Advanced Air Coordination School at Cranwell can graduate only 24 controllers every 6 weeks, while operational requirements call for hundreds of trained operators across multiple theaters. The solution comes from an unexpected source. Controllers who completed Davies' training program begin developing their own instructional techniques, creating a network of training centers that spread his methods exponentially. Flight Lieutenant Pemberton establishes a coordination school in Italy supporting Mediterranean operations. Squadron leader Montgomery creates training programs for American Air Forces in England. Flying Officer Thornton develops specialized courses for night fighter coordination. Each training center adapts Davies' core principles to local requirements while maintaining the fundamental philosophy of flexible, adaptive communication. The decentralized approach proves more effective than centralized training because instructors understand the specific challenges their graduates will face in operational assignments. Davies monitors this expansion with satisfaction tempered by concern. He worries that rapid growth might dilute the quality of training or lead to misapplication of his techniques. His fears prove unfounded. Controllers trained at satellite schools consistently demonstrate the same tactical thinking and adaptive problem-solving that characterized Davies' original students. The validation comes during the final months of the European War, when Allied air forces launch Operation Clarion, a coordinated attack on German transportation networks involving over 9,000 aircraft operating simultaneously across Germany. The mission requires coordination between American heavy bombers, RAF medium bombers, fighter escorts from multiple nations, and tactical aircraft supporting ground operations. Davies coordinates the operation from a temporary control center established specifically for Clarion. The complexity challenges every aspect of frequency management developed over the previous 10 months. Aircraft operate at different altitudes, speeds, and mission profiles while sharing the same airspace. Weather conditions vary across the operational area, affecting radio propagation propagation and requiring constant frequency adjustments. German interference attempts disrupt some channels, forcing controllers to switch frequencies dynamically. The coordination succeeds beyond all expectations. Over 9,000 aircraft complete their missions with minimal communication difficulties. Coordination delays, which had plagued similar large-scale operations, prove virtually non-existent. German transportation networks suffer crippling damage, while Allied losses remain remarkably low considering the scale of the operation. Field Marshal Hermann Göring, commander of the Luftwaffe, later acknowledges the superiority of Allied air coordination in his post-war interrogation. By 1945, the Allies could coordinate thousands of aircraft with precision we could never match. Their communication systems allowed tactical coordination that made effective defense nearly impossible. Individual aircraft might be shot down, but their formations maintained perfect coordination despite our interference attempts. The strategic implications extend far beyond tactical success. Davies's frequency management system enables Allied air power to operate as a unified force rather than separate national air forces conducting parallel operations. American bombers coordinate seamlessly with British fighters. Free French squadrons integrate perfectly with Polish formations. The technical innovation creates political and military unity that strengthens the entire Allied coalition. As the European War concludes in May 1945, Davies receives recognition that acknowledges his contribution's historic significance. King George VI awards him the Distinguished Service Medal, citing exceptional innovation in military communications that fundamentally improved Allied air operations. The citation understates the achievement's magnitude, but Davies prefers modest recognition to elaborate ceremony. More meaningful recognition comes from pilots whose lives Davies' system preserved. Flight Lieutenant Robert Mitchell writes, "I flew 147 combat missions using frequency management coordination. The difference between old procedures and Davies' system meant the difference between confusion and confidence, between isolation and support, between survival and death for many of us." Similar testimonials arrive from across Allied air forces. American bomber crews credit Davies' coordination with reducing losses during deep penetration missions over Germany. RAF night fighter pilots acknowledge that improved ground control enabled interceptions impossible under previous systems. Transport pilots flying supply missions to resistance forces throughout occupied Europe praise coordination that allowed precise drops despite dangerous flying conditions. But Davies' greatest satisfaction comes from statistical analysis compiled by RAF operational research sections. Combat losses for aircraft operating under frequency management coordination averaged 23% lower than similar missions using traditional procedures. The reduction stems not from superior equipment or tactics, but from improved coordination that allows aircraft to support each other more effectively. The psychological impact proves equally significant. Pilots operating under Davies' system report higher confidence levels, improved mission effectiveness, and better coordination with supporting units. The knowledge that ground controllers can maintain reliable communication throughout missions reduces stress and allows aircrew to focus on tactical execution rather than navigation and coordination concerns. As attention turns to the continuing war against Japan, Davies faces requests to adapt his system for Pacific operations. The challenges appear daunting. Pacific air operations involve longer ranges, extended overwater flights, and coordination between land-based and carrier aircraft operating from mobile platforms. Traditional radio coordination struggles with these requirements even under peacetime conditions. Davies approaches Pacific adaptation systematically, analyzing operational requirements and communication challenges specific to that theater. The distances exceed anything encountered in Europe. Aircraft operate beyond normal radio range for extended periods. Carrier task forces move constantly, changing the geographic relationships between air units and control centers. The solution requires extending frequency management principles beyond direct controller-to-aircraft communication. Davies develops a relay system using aircraft as communication links between distant formations and control centers. High-altitude reconnaissance aircraft maintain contact with multiple tactical formations while relaying coordination information to fleet controllers. The system creates a mobile communication network that adapts to changing tactical situations. Initial tests prove promising, but reveal new challenges. Pacific operations involve more complex multi-service coordination than European missions. Navy carrier aircraft, Marine Corps fighters, Army Air Forces bombers, and Allied air forces must coordinate simultaneously while operating from different bases with different communication equipment and procedures. Davies addresses this challenge by creating standardized frequency management procedures that work across service boundaries. Instead of separate coordination systems for each service, he develops unified procedures that allow seamless coordination between different types of units, regardless of their parent organizations. The system faces its crucial test during the planned invasion of Japan, Operation Downfall. The operation would require coordinating the largest air armada in history, exceeding even D-Day's complexity. Over 15,000 aircraft would operate simultaneously, including strategic bombers, tactical fighters, carrier aircraft, transport planes, and specialized support aircraft. Davies spends months developing coordination procedures for Downfall, creating a frequency management network capable of handling unprecedented complexity. The system incorporates lessons learned from 3 years of combat operations while adapting to unique Pacific requirements. Davies never got to test his Pacific coordination system. Japan surrendered on August 15, 1945, ending the war before Operation Downfall began. But his innovation had already transformed military aviation forever. What started as one sergeant's desperate improvisation during D-Day's chaotic first hours became the foundation for modern air traffic control worldwide. Today, every aircraft you see coordinated through busy airspace traces its safe passage to a Welsh radio operator who refused to accept that good pilots should die because of bad procedures. Sometimes the greatest revolutions begin with someone simply asking, "What if we tried it differently?"